Hello guys, welcome to lesson number 30 of our Siberian Husky. We've aptly named this beautiful creature Shadow. I've gone a little bit further from last week's lesson. I've added a little bit more value into some of the white fur, and I've started to bring the contrast out into some of the darker fur. I didn't go too far because I wanted to really sort of concentrate and show you how I was developing some of this white fur. So I've freshened up my kneaded eraser as always. So I'm just pulling that apart, stretching that, and we're going to be working with the HB pencil today, the 2B, possibly some of the 4B, and definitely some of the 7B in some of those darker areas. So what I'm going to do initially is I'm just going to work a little bit with the HB pencil, and I'm just going to start trying to bring out a little bit more of the value around some of these darkest areas. So this mouth area needs a little bit of attention. I'm not dark enough in here, and this is going to be one of those opportunities for us to create depth and dimension. It's been fantastic seeing some of your work over on the Facebook group. I know that some of you have caught up to almost this lesson, so you've taken your previous lessons and you're right up, bang up to date, which is fantastic. I've loved seeing some of your versions of Shadow. If this is the first time that you've ever come across one of my videos, we're on lesson number 30 now. I wanted to put together a series of real-time videos teaching you everything or as much as I've learnt over the last 3 years. I've spent lots of money on art classes and lots of time practicing, and I just thought that I wanted to share some of the good things that I've picked up. I've taken good parts from various different teachers and things that I do like, things that I don't like, so I'm just going to share with you some of the things that I've learned and go through the process that I used to do, or I'm sort of still doing now. If you've not found our Facebook group, go and check that out. It's called Tutorial Tuesdays Beginners to Pro. Go and ask to be accepted into that group, and I will accept that, and then we can really start to see some of your brilliant work. If this is the first time, like I say, and you've not come across any of my videos before, I really would suggest going and checking out lessons 1 to 6 before you start diving into some of the portraits, because some of the techniques that I talk about and show you are possibly slightly different to anything that you've done before. I don't use anything to blend in my tutorials, so I don't use blending stumps, I don't use my finger, I don't use artist chamois, anything like that. I'm sort of teaching you to draw in its rawest and most basic form, and once you've got that, you can then turn your hand to doing whatever you like, whether that's going and doing some work in charcoal or coloured pencils. But I'm teaching you the basics and the fundamentals of how to create depth and dimension with just pencil. In some of the later videos, we will talk about charcoal and maybe some other mediums. And the lessons are going pretty well. I'm really happy with how the group's sort of getting along with a lot of the work. I've seen a lot of your work recently. I do try and comment and give as much advice and help and praise as I can. We've got a lot of people that are also doing the same thing over on the group, so it's really nice to see you. So go and check the group out. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications icon. That means that you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video, which currently I'm releasing videos on Saturdays and Tuesdays. I initially went out with the premise of just releasing the videos, these tutorials, on a Tuesday, hence the name Tutorial Tuesdays. But people have started really getting into it, and it's nice that people have wanted more, and people are trying to keep up. But don't forget, there's no rush. You don't have to keep up with us. But it would be lovely to, just see some of your work, whether it's from the tutorials or not, whether it's just some of the art that you've been doing yourselves. It's lovely to see that and to share that. So I'm working with this HB pencil, and I'm doing tapered strokes, which we do cover in the earlier videos. But basically a tapered stroke is it's a line pulling towards me, and I'm gliding on and off of the paper almost as though it's an aeroplane coming into land. So I'm skimming the paper, but then rather than it just running down the runway to its gate, it's pulling off and taking off again. You sometimes see on some of the movies the aeroplanes coming in on the aircraft carriers and just touching down and then lifting off again. That's what I'm ultimately doing with this tapered stroke. And over hundreds and hundreds of those, we build up a value on the paper. I had a comment from somebody earlier on today over on, I think it was on my Facebook page, might have been Instagram, talking about how they've always struggled to build value up, and they start with a 4B pencil and they're always getting a grainy effect. And they've watched a couple of my videos now, and they're now starting to understand how to avoid that grainy look. And it's a combination of building up layer upon layer of these lines, but also moving up and down your different grades of pencil. So starting in a lot of the cases with a harder pencil, one of your H pencils, and then working your way up through the layers into the softer pencils. And that's how we build a lovely rich tone and value. So I'm working in these lighter areas of our dog's fur here with my HB pencil, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to use this brush. Now I've got a very soft haired brush here, and I'm just going to brush some of the value into the lighter areas. And then a very cool trick is we're going to use our Mono Zero eraser, and we're going to take out some of those whiter strands of hair. So my Mono Zero eraser is a mechanical eraser. They're very cheap. You can get these from Amazon, and they come with refills. And what we're going to do is we're going to start taking out some of these strands of hair. And I'm working at the moment in this very light area over to the left of our dog, underneath the nose and the mouth area, because that's where the light is reflecting the most. Our light source appears to be coming from this left side as we're looking at the dog. So again, I'm using this in the same way that I would use my pencil. I'm using these tapered strokes, and as I've covered in the earlier videos when we first started looking at shadow here, when you're drawing fur, what we're looking for is we're looking for lots of very small sort of V shapes within the fur. If you look at animal fur, you don't have regimental or regimented lines of hair. You have lots of crisscrossing, you have lots of overlaps, and the best method that I've found of creating something that looks realistic and flowing is to almost create these small V shapes going in the general direction of the fur. Now again, when we're drawing animal fur, the same as when we're trying to draw hair on a human, don't get wrapped up in trying to draw every single individual strand of hair. You can get bogged down and it looks unrealistic. When somebody's looking at a picture, whether that's a photograph or a drawing, the brain interprets hair through the patterns and the way that light's hitting it, and what we know as the way that hair reacts under certain light conditions. We're not picking up every single strand of hair. So that's one thing that you can easily fall into the trap of, and that's trying to draw too many of these individual lines. So I'm getting a rough idea of the patterns of the flow, almost like looking at the grains of wood in a tree. You know, where are the knots, where's the general flow? I'm looking at that, and using my kneaded eraser, I'm starting to bring some of that value out. Just highlighting some of these wonderful thin and clean white hairs. But like we've said in earlier videos, we can't represent a white hair with a stroke of a pencil. So what we need to do when we're drawing anything that needs to be white is we work in the negative spaces to begin with. We get the value, we build the value up in the negative spaces with our pencils. We brush the excess value into the whiter or lighter areas, and then we take that value out with our erasers. You can get a lovely effect with the kneaded eraser as well, if you don't have access to a Mono Zero. But these Mono Zero erasers are a game changer. They're a wonderful tool, because it is essentially the same as using it's almost like I'm using a white pencil here. But what I'm doing is I'm taking the value out. And because I haven't pressed too hard, because of the technique that I've been trying to teach, where we are using very light pressure and building up the value as I'm going to come with my 2B pencil now actually and start working into some of this darker area here, the darker area of the light area. Sorry, I lost my train of thought then. The technique that I'm showing and trying to teach is one that we're not pressing too hard with any of the pencils. We're not getting too much value out with the pressure of the pencil. We're building the value up by layering, softly layering. And once you understand that concept, it's very easy then to take thin hairs out, which looks so realistic. So I can see now I need some more value in this area underneath the eye. And again, I'm using that tapered stroke, and I'm trying to get these variants of colours, and this is what's really going to bring this to life and make our dog look realistic and look, hopefully in some cases, photorealistic. And in some cases we can actually achieve a look that's even more realistic. Because what my printer cannot do, that I can do with a pencil, is I can get some very, very subtle tones within the dark areas. So my printer's printed that out as black and it looks fairly flat in certain areas, but I can adjust the levels with my pencil and just add more realism and a sense of depth in certain areas that we can't capture with a printed piece of paper, unless you're spending a lot of money on very expensive, very high-tech printers using very expensive paper. The kind of finish that we get with your regular printer, which is what I've used here, can be surpassed with the pencil, which is wonderful. So I can see we've got a lot more darkness around this area. And I'm not just going to press on really hard because it's dark. If I need to move up a grade of pencil, I will do. And that's the trap that I don't want you to fall into. Just because something's darker, don't just try and take it to that level with the current pencil that you have. So I've just moved up to my 4B there now. And I'm just going to start bringing out some more of the darker shades. If I need to move up to the 7B, great. I've also got the opportunity to use a little bit of my secret weapon that we've discovered a few lessons ago, the black pencil crayon. I use a Polychromos pencil. We can do that, so I can sort of save that almost to the end. I'm going to try and bring the values up as much as I can with my pencils. Just taking out some individually darker strands in there that we can see. So yeah, it'd be really good to catch up with you over on the group. Come and join our group. It's Tutorial Tuesdays, Beginner to Pro. You can also find me over on Instagram. It's at artisticn1k, Artistic Nick, which is exactly the same name as the YouTube channel. If you just drop me a message that you followed and you're from the group or you're from the YouTube channel, I'll follow you back, and hopefully we can grow our Instagrams together and get some fantastic work out there. I know that some of you have been busy trying to open Instagram accounts up, and I'm trying to help out as much as I can and answer as many questions and help you all figure out some of this social media stuff, just so that you can get some of your wonderful artwork out there. So I can see I need a little bit more value in this ear area, just to bring out the fact that that is a hole. Okay. So I think we need to just do a little bit more now in this nose area. Bring out some of the definition of this nostril. And then just almost some very small circular movements in the shine of the nose here, because although we do have a very white area, it isn't purely flat. It's, if you look closely at a dog's nose, it has these series of sort of dots. It has a texture to it. So again, I want to try and create that and represent that as best as I can. Just those finer details that take your drawing to another level of detail and a more realistic level. So I can see coming in under this nose here, we need a little bit more value. Again, working with this tapered stroke and working in these small V shapes. Not being afraid to push the darks. If it's dark on my reference image, it needs to be dark on my drawing. So I can use my brush to move a little bit of this value around. And don't be worried if you get some value in an area you don't want it. We can always take that out, and it's that process that's going to give our dog some real depth and dimension. It's this process of taking out some of the lighter strands over and over again. It gives us another opportunity to add another layer on top of the layers that we've already got, which then gives us this very rich depth. It doesn't just look like we've got one sort of passing over of hair that we've tried once. And I think I commented on some of your work over on the Facebook group recently. People were putting pictures up, and I definitely recall commenting on somebody that they needed to continue adding. So what they were doing on the dog's fur was correct. They were, they were doing everything correctly, but they'd just not done enough of it. So they hadn't gone through the process over and over and over. They'd almost done it once or twice, and what was happening was we were starting to see the grain of the paper coming through rather than layer upon layer of fur, essentially. So I'm just, I've got an initial layer here in this ear area here. So, you know, I won't leave it at that. I'm going to brush in some value. I'm going to take it away. I'm going to add more value. I'm going to brush that in. I'm going to take that away. And it's this continued application of layers of hair that gives us a very realistic look. So I'm just going to remove some of the excess value from around the edges that we don't need it, because we do know with these Caran D'ache pencils, which is what I'm using, that we do have a lot of excess value. So I'm just going to remove some of that. We don't need it all in there, and it's amazing how much we do actually end up with in certain areas that are definitely not required. Okay, looking nice, Mr. Wolf. So I'm actually going to use my kneaded eraser. I'm going to take one end of it now, and I'm going to pinch it into almost, we call it a blade. So I'm just going to pinch it, and I'm just going to start taking out a few thicker strands of hair. The kneaded eraser tends to remove the value in a different way to the Mono Zero, so you get a slightly different finish, and again it's another layer of texture. And I'm going to remove a little bit from around the iris. So we're constantly trying to play with textures and contrast. I'm going to use all of the tools available to my disposal. And some of you might only have a kneaded eraser. You can also use something called Blue Tack, which is available here in the UK. Now within this dark hair I can see some lighter strands where the light's reflecting, so I'm just going to start taking a few of those out. And what you initially think is insignificant, and what can one hair here really do for my overall drawing, when you times that by an hour's worth of work, those individual strands of hair that you deemed as insignificant ultimately end up being the elements that bring your drawing to life and really take it to another dimension, another level. So again, I'm using this kneaded eraser in exactly the same way as I've been using my pencil and my Mono Zero. I'm making sure to freshen up the small blade every now and then, but I'm using it as a tapered stroke. I'm pulling towards me. Now I can already see now that we are creating some great contrast. The illusion of hair on fur, fur on hair, whiskers, all of these things that we want to try and capture in a pet portrait are starting to come good. So I think we're sort of as far as I wanted to kind of go today with this. I'm quite happy to let you have a go and have a play around with working in these lighter areas of fur. So I'll continue to mess around with a little bit of this fur here underneath the mouth area. I'm going to start to just bring the contrast up again a little bit. I might use a little bit of 7B in some of the darker fur as well. But I'm going to sort of leave you there with that. Thank you so much for watching once again and continuing to support the channel and the Facebook group. which is great. If you haven't been there already, come and check us out. Tutorial Tuesdays, beginner to pro. Don't forget to drop me a comment and leave me a like. It does make such a difference to the channel and to the Facebook group. More people start to share the content and it gets out to more people, which then has a snowball effect, which is great for everybody because, like I say, I'm there trying to help you out because drawing really has changed my life. It's given me so many more options at seeing things. I've drawn for people, I've earned money from it, and it would be fantastic if some of you could have that opportunity. But you know, taking the commissions and things like that aside and taking it away from it, you know, we're not necessarily doing it for that. It's nice to be able to do that. Just having the ability to draw and create things from nothing is, in my opinion, one of the most amazing things that's happened to me in the last sort of 3 years. So have a go at that. Carry on working in those areas, and I will see you later in the week for another video. Thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye. Hit subscribe, smack the notifications button, follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.